Music has always been a great source of relaxation and comfort for me, like a sort of therapy, yeah? Usually my tastes lie in the fundamental genres of Scandinavian metal, but over the years many composers and artists from the instrumental and orchestrated realm have brought me much joy in my life simply by blessing my eardrums with the sound of their creations. It all started with film scores for me. Indiana Jones, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Braveheart, Gladiator, and even The Mummy. But over the years, I would begin to listen to something that I find far more powerful: video game soundtracks. Why video games, you ask? Well, a couple of reasons, I suppose. One is because when you play a game, the music is directly responding to you, which means you, in a way, control it. When the bear jumps out at you in Skyrim, those drums start beating and horns start blaring to let you know that a fight's going down. When you step into Tristram in Diablo 1 or 2 and you hear that familiar guitar, it haunts you and instills within you a sense of creepiness that feels oh so good. Or what about when you're flying around in space in Mass Effect and that chill ambience kicks in that makes you nod your head ever so slightly? These are moments that aren't as prevalent when watching films or simply listening to albums because you are the one that triggers them rather than them simply being thrust upon you. You know that you're controlling these emotions because you bring them about. Unless you're playing a super scripted game like Outlast or something. Game music is also paramount when it comes to immersion. How would a boss fight feel in Dark Souls if it were set to clown music? Well, probably pretty damn awesome, but you most likely wouldn't take it as seriously as it would break the mood. The music sets the tone and massages the player's brain meat in a way that allows them to feel a specific way at a specific time. Very important to immersion. So in honor of this, I decided my first video would simply be homage to some video game soundtracks that I think are fairly unique and just overall great. These are soundtracks that I listen to on a regular basis, usually when writing or working, so I know them very well. This list won't be done in any particular order, as I think applying a ranking system to things based solely on what I like is somewhat redundant. But I will say which ones I like the most. Some of these are fairly popular, but perhaps there are some people that haven't heard them yet. Hopefully someone will see this video and learn about some new OSTs that they may enjoy and find some happiness in. If that happens, even just once, then I consider this video a success. So let's get started, shall we? Battle Brothers. Upon first hearing the music in Overhyde Studios' tactical turn-based RPG, Battle Brothers, it comes off like a standard generic score that doesn't bring too much to the table. However, when you really start listening, you soon discover that the German duo of Breakdown Epiphanies have created something fairly unique, especially given the context of the game. For those who aren't familiar, Battle Brothers is a particularly ruthless adventure of you running a mercenary company. You lose men left and right, as well as struggle to manage resources. It is very unforgiving and can lead to some depressing moments. Breakdown Epiphanies captures this feeling of a hard life very well in their music. There is a sense of foreboding and hopelessness distilled within the score, evident in the track's Curse of the Emperor. And the Legion Awakens. Then it's peppered with moments of confidence, moving forward, and even slight elation somewhat shown in the guitar-strewn pieces Thug Life and Alleys of Weissenhaven, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Probably not. Then there's a nice sense of exploration and sitting around a campfire one feels when hearing Mercenary's Rest. Overall, Breakdown Epiphanies created a really nice addition to the game that I find is worth listening to even while not playing. Crusader Kings 2. Composed by, again, forgive me if I'm not pronouncing this correctly, Andreas Valdertoff, Paradox's grand strategy title hosts a very sincere soundtrack that really captures the essence of the time period in which the game is based. Now, I'm not a music history buff, so I can't say what the music was like in the medieval era, but I can say that the Crusader Kings 2 soundtracks really makes me feel like I'm there. The most noticeable track in this aspect, I would say, is that of Coeur De Lion. It starts off with a mellow harmony of strings that instills in you a sense of wonder and opportunity before it transitions into the feeling of being in a king's court during a feast where minstrels are off by the fire playing their instruments as you talk to some fancy-pants lady in waiting. This is further experienced through the catchy tune In Taberna. Now, I don't know who that guy is or what he's saying, but it's excellent, and I often find myself singing to it with whatever made-up words I choose at the time. But it's not all minstrels and courtesans. The soundtrack also hosts a great amount of conquest-inducing work, such as Saladin Besiege Jerusalem. Then there are the lovely choir pieces that leave you in a comforting calm as you sit back and proceed to plot out your uncle's murder. I find that Andreas Valdotov crafted something special here that truly captures the feeling of being in medieval times. I wonder if there was a lot of research involved or if he just winged it. Either way, it's a fantastic score that's well worth the listen. Stellaris. From the same studio and composer as Crusader Kings 2 comes another soundtrack that really immerses the player into the grand strategy space adventure Stellaris. The soundtrack and all its DLCs, some of which were composed by Meyer rather than Andrew Valdotov, are very ambient and mellow with highlights of epic, powerful scores that gives one the feeling of flying through space battles or just passing by supernovas with mouth agape in awe. Most tracks are fairly large at around 7+ minutes on average, which is consistent with the vastness of the game and its time-consuming just 5 more minutes nature. A great example of this is from the Humanoid Species Pack DLC composed by Meyer, a little ditty called The Imperial Fleet's Second Coming. You also have the inspirational battle piece, Hostile Fleet Detected. Then there's the mysterious spacefaring works, Faster Than Light. And Dragon Breath. Much like Crusader Kings 2, Andrew Valdetoff and Meyer show their talent of capturing a game's atmosphere and theme in their music that really immerses the player. Where Crusader Kings 2 throws you into medieval times, Stellaris thrusts you into futuristic space, conquering star systems and battling space pirates and outer system invaders. Stellaris' soundtrack embraces this and is a great addition to the game, as well as a great listen anytime. Shadowrun Dragonfall, Director's Cut. Another tactical turn-based RPG, Shadowrun Dragonfall Director's Cut, has a very intriguing soundtrack composed by John Everest. It's hard for me, as a simple fan and consumer, to place this music in any particular genre because it's so unique. The album is definitely cyberpunkish, futuristic, and sci-fi, but perhaps people that are more into this style of music could compare it to other artists or albums, as I am at a loss. That said, I thoroughly enjoy it as it is catchy, consistent, and just all-around smooth. I find myself bobbing my head a great deal when listening to it. The tracks can be emotional, sad, and even a little bleak, such as Horn and Ivory, Glory's theme. But they can also be smooth, cool, and catchy, like Too Quiet. And Calling All Runners, Blitz theme. Then there's complex pieces that give a sense of traversing through a cyberpunk city filled with degeneracy and wonder. Shadowrun Dragonfall's soundtrack really embraces that cyberpunk sci-fi feel, leaving the player well immersed in the world. John Everest knocked it out of the park here, and I find this soundtrack among some of my most listened to. Diablo 2. Aw yeah, Diablo 2! Not only is it my favorite game of all time, but Matt Uelmen has become a national treasure in the gaming community given his fantastic compositions. Diablo 2's music is perhaps one of the most well-synergized soundtracks out there. It completely pulls you into the game's dark themes and atmosphere with virtually no expense to itself, meaning there is rarely a moment when the player feels the music is out of place or inconsistent. Matt Uelmen is just that good. The tracks are very fluid and seem to have African and Middle Eastern influence given the goblet drums as well as the style in the track Sanctuary. The haunting tracks of Rogue and Wilderness especially encapsulate Diablo 2's dark theme and feeling of woe and despair. course, there's the infamous piece that even non-fans of Diablo may recognize, Tristram. Delectable. Yes, Matt Ullman definitely earned my respect with Diablo 2, and I highly recommend people check out his other work because it's all pretty great. Deus Ex. According to Google, Deus Ex was a group effort by what used to be Starlight Productions' Alexander Brandon and Mikhail Vandenbos, as well as Dan Gardopi and Reeves Gabriels. Forgive me if I'm undoubtedly butchering their names. Anywho, this joint effort really brought forth one of the most unique soundtracks my supple ears have ever had the pleasure of hearing. The tracks are so diverse yet stably consistent with each other that it doesn't distract or detract from the game at all. Naturally, it fits in superbly with the game's sci-fi theme. The entire album is fantastic, but a few tracks that stand out to me would be OceanLab, Hong Kong streets. And the completely chill UNATCO. Overall, Deus Ex's soundtrack is a real treat, and honestly, I have never really heard anything else quite like it, which brings me to my next recommendation. Talos Principle. That's what your ears are blessed with upon first starting up the game, and it's glorious. This is just a taste of what Crow Team's brilliant composer Damian Moravinac brought to the table. The soundtrack is perhaps some of the most relaxing music I have ever experienced, and I have nothing but solid praise for it. Virtually every single track is a masterpiece and soothing to the ears and soul, but I'll throw out some of my favorites to give you guys a bit of what you're in for. The music speaks for itself better than I ever could. This is another OST that just stands alone as far as its uniqueness. I just can't compare to much else because nothing really sounds like it. Damien has built something truly inspiring here, and I implore everyone to listen to the soundtrack with an acute ear because there is so much hidden in the tracks that it may pass you by on the first listen. Give it a go.
The Big Three.
Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim. Yeah, I'm sure many saw this one coming. Jeremy Soule, the composer of what I call the Big Three, Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim, is without a doubt my favorite composer, not just in the video game industry, but of all time. His work has gotten me through a lot of tough times. No matter how bad my day was going, no matter how much stress I was in, I could always turn on some Jeremy Soule and my frustration would just melt away. His work is that powerful. What he does with violins, cellos, xylophones, and even harps is just amazing. So it's no surprise that I saved these soundtracks for last, as they are probably my favorite. Now again, I don't rank things when it comes to entertainment because a number or star system is completely arbitrary and doesn't hold much value in my opinion. A 7 out of 10 for someone may be a 2-star for another. It's neither concrete nor consistent. So all I can say is what I would and would not recommend, and holy crap do I recommend the Elder Scrolls soundtracks. Skyrim has to be my favorite by far, but let's go chronologically and start with Morrowind. Soule is responsible for the Elder Scrolls theme we know and love today, and this all started with Morrowind, Nerevar Rising. With each new game, the theme changed slightly but kept its consistency, such as the pounding drums demonstrated in Skyrim. But Morrowind has a great deal of soothing melodies to calm the nerves while exploring its ash-laden land, such as the road most traveled. And Caprice. But no other piece has quite an impact on me than my absolute favorite orchestrated track of all time, Blessing of Vivec. Delicioso. I could listen to this track 100 times back to back and never tire of it. But then came Oblivion. At over 10 minutes longer than its predecessor and with 5 more tracks, Soul brought a bit more to the game. Oblivion is interesting in that it feels almost experimental. It seemed like a transitional album from Morrowind to Skyrim, as if it was there to connect the two despite them being created years and years apart. I say this because its sound has elements of both. There are the cleaner-cut violins and straightforwardness of Morrowind, but also the more epic grandeur of large-scale orchestras found more in Skyrim. If I had to compare them all, I would say Morrowind is simple and sweet, Oblivion is experimental, eclectic, and transitional, whereas Skyrim is more complex, atmospheric, and powerful. Granted, I am not a composer, and this is my opinion with the context of solely being a consumer and fan of this fine material, so take that as you will. That said, with Oblivion we have more, what I would say, Morrowindy tracks like Wings of Kinnereth, as well as Sunrise of Flutes. But then there's also more Skyrim-like tracks presented in Peace of Akatosh. And Dusk at the Market. There are also some tracks that hold their own and capture the Roman feeling of Cyrodiil, like March of the Marauders, and title theme Reign of Septums. Easy to say that the entire Oblivion soundtrack brings a lot to the table and is a nice setup for what I believe to be one of the greatest fantasy video game soundtracks of our time, a little thing called Skyrim. What makes the Skyrim soundtrack so great is just the overall scale of it. No doubt Jeremy Soule had a bigger budget to work with, so he was able to pump out 3 hours and 40 minutes of pure quality. There are choirs, glockenspiels, cellos, violins, drums, tacos, harps, oboes, this sort of guitar thingy, and much more. The album is just a never-ending pleasure ride that just sucks you into the immersion when you're playing the game. If there's one thing I take away from Skyrim, it's the music. If I were to post all the tracks I like from this album, we'd be here all day and night. So I just want to share some samples of my absolute favorites, starting with my favorite in the entire album, the second moon and what is also my ringtone, Secunda. But Jeremy Soule offers much more in this masterpiece, such as the soothing tundra. And Frostfall. Then there's the emotionally charged Wind Guide You. and the streets of Whiterun. And lastly, a snippet from one of my favorite tracks to listen to while reading or writing, the ambience of Skyrim atmospheres. It's fair to say that I really can't get enough of Skyrim's music, and I can't wait to see what Jeremy Soule has in store for us going forward, because he has yet to disappoint me so far, although Guild Wars 2 OST was a bit meh in my opinion. So there you have it, some fairly enjoyable and relaxing soundtracks that I would recommend if you're ever in a surly mood and need something to wash away that stress. Thanks for watching, and I hope some of you discovered something new and will get some enjoyment out of these great soundtracks. And to end the video, I'm going to leave you with a few honorable mentions. Enjoy and take it easy.